what we want to do is we want to build caps in our systems so that we can understand what's happening, though, so that we can notify others about what's happening, and so that we can do reconstruction, and so that we can get other views that we didn't anticipate. And we do that with creating multiple event streams. And that means we tap into different places. Each of those places generates a set of events, and those events are of different types. They can be technical or business, and they'll have different use cases. And so the notion that I've got some events, I always think is dumb. The question is, what do those events exist for, and do you need others? And are you going to merge all those different kinds of events into the same stream, or are you going to have different ones? So my general position on this is you're going to want more than one type of event or notification. You're going to have more than one stream. And there's generally, it's obvious that we have two of these, and let's take a look at this. So what are the use cases for this? In my mind, the use cases, there's a set of business use cases. I want to know what somebody called into a call center, somebody came into a chat bot, and I kind of want to know what their interactions were in the past. Another one is litigation support. People will claim they did something, they bought something, they shipped something, they hit the button, they paid for it, they got insurance, they opened an account, bank account, whatever it is, right? And it turns out sometimes when you get sued by those, you need a set of events that tells you the end state of where a person ended up is not interesting. Like if people got declined for a loan, it's not just that they got declined. We need to know why. We'd like to know what systems were involved in that. We may need to come back with that. Call center support, that's when a counselor or a call center employee actually needs to know kind of what's happening or what actually happened in the past. They know how a customer got somewhere. We also have operations support. There's a set of events that are useful when we're trying to understand if the system is behaving or not. Another set of things we do is we do business analytics. We'll do technical analytics. We'll do data warehousing kinds of things. And if you look at those, a lot of times it's not just the end state. It may be incremental state that's important, or the reason we got the incremental state. A lot of times in data stores, all you know is it was this state on this date, or sometimes you don't even know that. You just know the state is this now. And so we would like to know why we got there, and if previous attempts were declined and other things. So ML training, if we're trying to teach the system how people operate, so we can make recommendations, or we can find security violations, or we can do save lives in a medical situation, right? A lot of that. Those streaming information can be very useful for that, not just state. KPIs are an example, obvious example, right? If we need to know rates and counts, which are two of the metric, different kinds of numbers. In those cases, a lot of times events or statistical information is important, right? The end state is kind of cool, but the end state a lot of times represents, something. Hey, this person actually was approved for a loan. They have a loan in the system. It was approved. The KPI might be what percentage are approved, right? So we could do that against the database, but a lot of times it's more interesting when we can get better data. Maybe they tried a couple times in the same day, right? And all we've got. Anyway, so you get the idea. Another one, and I feel like these two, they're kind of not really related, but I put them together because I didn't want any more sections. And one of them is test data seeds, right? If we get events and we get inbound events and requests, we can scrub those and use those as test data, and they'll have the right distribution, the right bell curve of request types, and we can get the rates and bursty and all that stuff. We actually have data for that. And another one is invocation replay. You see this in recovery. I'm going to assume that your apps fail just like some of mine do, and they will drop stuff on the floor or have to do retries, and sometimes we'll need to reinvoke. And so where we're going to reinvoke a lot of times is based on what event streams we have and can we replay those. Another one, another area is history store and data replication. CDC, change data capture, is really an event stream, and that's used for building a secondary database or for building a history style database with all the as of dates where the primary database just has current. The two other cases are partner system notification. This is really big. So maybe a technical this field change isn't important, but this business level thing, a person actually got an account and their name is blah, or here's the account number. That's an event. And in database CDC, that might be harder to tease out. So partner system notifications and business event logs, these are the use cases we have. And if we do that, it turns out that those different use cases work better. We get better events if we tap the data source in different places, right? So we need to know where we're going to stream the source data from for different use cases. So what I did here is I created a super simple application. You submit some data into it, and I'm just doing the service tier of this thing. It's going to validate the input. That's the submitted. It's going to take a submitted data. So that's a stream of data that was put in the front door. it will validate that input to make sure that the processing can occur. Whatever comes out of that will either be validated or rejected. So those are two other interesting data points. The business logic will be run. The business logic will be finished. A change set will be made to update the persistence store. The persistence store will actually have a change applied to it. And that would be example change data capture. And then the end results are calculated resulting from the business logic and the database changes, and that's returned in a response. So if you look at that, we have a couple of places where we do really raw things. Like if you look at the validate input on the submitted side, totally raw event, have no idea what the outcome is going to be in any situation. We don't really know what business event that occurred was tied to at that time. We actually end up having to go through and start the business logic and understand the meaning of that request. Yeah, you asked to update a person's last name, or you asked them to update a field. What does that actually mean? Oh, that adjusts the state machine. It turns out that was actually everything we needed. So the user actually ended up submitting their loan application. So what we need to look at is the events can be, we can generate events from any of these stages, right? And the events can land in any place. So any of those arrows that are coming out of the bottom, those events could actually go somewhere, and then we could use them for different purposes. I'm not saying that we would get 2, 4, 6, 8, all 8 event streams. That would be overkill. But we need to think about, what are the use cases? Where can we pick that off? And we shouldn't be shy about having more than one stream. Like if you're like, oh man, we don't have events there. Well, you know what? Maybe we need events from somewhere else. And those can land in different places. And we also have to look at which of those events are for internal consumption, including analytics, right? If we're doing an agile team where you build it, you own the entire stack, that might go all the way to analytics. So then what about teams that aren't in my, or in my team, and those will be consumed by others. And so those may need to go different places. So, this is the same argument I've said a couple times here. Don't be afraid to have more than one event stream. Let's do the right event stream for what we need. So in my case, I actually picked 4 here that I wanted. A lot of times I'll do 3, but I could see 4, right? One is the input, and this one makes sense because if we want to do replay, we want to understand why something blew up. If we want to scrub data and then use it as test data, right? We need the raw data at the source. And so in that case, that would be the data submitted by API, and I would argue that is a technical category, right? We're not really thinking the user tried to open 4 accounts. It's because we needed the open account event so we could retry it, or we could do something else with it, or we could generate test data. So I would argue that's at the very front door. The business logic one is the user opened a checking account, or the user opened the checking account with this promo or whatever it is, right? So it's more than just the user made this CRUD request against some microservice. It's the fact that some business operation occurred. Home equity, home loan approved, whatever that is. And so in that case, the input was to try and do a home loan, and the business logic, the business event was user applied for home loan, user approved for home loan. They might even generate more than one. And I would argue those are business. Those can go in the event topics. In the event displays, in the user interface, they can go to analytics and they can be used in ML. But that's really a business action. What business operation was the user attempting? I invoked a REST service does not always tell you that, right? And then we have persistence data change. So in this case, I decided that the store results weren't very interesting to me. And what I wanted was CDC, change data capture. It was basically, I needed to build a history store, and I wanted to replicate this database somewhere else. Database replication is almost always done through change data capture, which is an event stream. And I would argue it's a technical event stream because you don't care what the meaning of those changes are. All you care is that you know what all the changes are. The last one, occasionally I'll do this. You got to be got to be cognizant of personally identifiable information. We'll talk about that too. But basically the idea here is that sometimes we'll need to know, and not just in a metric sort of way, like an open tracing thing that goes to some dashboard. We may actually want to record the responses. We have to be cautious of PII. And that may be because we may want to use, again, that data as test data. We go and scrub the original so there's no PII. We run the test, and we would like to see the same response back. We may use it for other triaging kinds of things, but that's technical. I tend to need that one as that event, just success or failure typically. And anyway, you get the idea, right? So the question is, pick a couple. which of the use cases do you have and where does it make sense in your app to pick up that data? And if that data is different than the other kinds of data you're picking up, then those would be different event streams. So I'm just going to put this out for retention, right? I got the same I picked 4 out of the 8 I've decided. Typically I'll do 3. A lot of times it'll be submitted, business events, and change data capture. And then we'll do regular metrics and not streaming for the responses. And so what I would argue is these all need to go somewhere, right? So a lot of times when you do change data capture, it goes in another database. But the other ones, where are they going to go? And they actually need persistence where that data will be kept. And then we need to understand how long we're going to keep it. So for this one here, I actually said the input, we're going to keep submitted data for 30 days. It really has no business meaning. We're only going to use it for triage, for generating test data, or for a retry if it turned out we blew something up. The business logic, a lot of times business events may have real meanings. So sometimes, we'll keep those business events. Hey, user opened account, user closed account, user filed a grievance, right? We'll keep that, whatever the litigation window is. And so in my case here, I decided I'm going to keep business events for 7 years in my store. And those business events or business logic that generated that user applied for an account, user got an account. We may notify other teams with that. So that's a case here where the business logic event is actually going 2 places, right? The input to our CRUD service doesn't make sense to pass to anybody else, but what business logic actually occurred in that service, we need to know, hey, this user got a loan. Oh, well, that affects, we now need insurance. We got to do something else, right? So in my case, where I looked at this for a couple of projects, the business events themselves have the same retention as the contract or whatever we're doing, whatever the business retention rules. And notifications to other systems hang around 30 days, and then it's their problem to get those notifications after that, right? So, and so that's 2 of those. And then persistence change data capture, those actually a lot of times you use to build a replicated database in another region if you're in the cloud, or they're used for other things. I'm going to pretend that those have the same data longevity as the database that generated and the database they would land in. So in this case, I picked 7 years. And the API response, a lot of times, I view that as just like the input one. We'll use that data on what the responses were for production support or for recovering data that was corrupted by a bad process or something. But I put 30 days here. Maybe submitted an API response should be like 90 days. But it's up to you. So persistence should fit the purpose. We're going to figure out what kind of store to put these in. So in my case, the submitted could be a huge number, or the business events could be a huge number. So some of those would go in a database, some might go in a data cloud warehouse, or some of them might just go into cloud storage, right? And we're good to go. And so each stream would have its own persistence, its own TTL, and they would have their own persistence type. We could use database, we can use blob store, we could use like an Elasticsearch, we could use a cloud warehouse, or we could just use the stream buffers themselves, and we would just leave this thing in the buffers for 30 days, and if anybody else needed access, they'd go to the stream storage. So that's another way to do it. So in the end, I guess what I'm really saying here, you got to do this up front, do it early. You can never get back the events you didn't create. So if it turned out you missed something, that's a mistake. You should look at this up front. Even if you don't have a place to put it other than cloud storage somewhere, a big database, that's cool. Even if you don't know how you're going to consume it. Some people will call this gold plating, but the problem is there are certain things you do, you can never get that information back if you didn't capture it. I'm not saying you got to be smart about or genius about saving it and organizing it and everything in the beginning. In the beginning, we just got to find a place to put it, and then we can decide, after some period of time, whether that made sense. So I actually view this as an NFR and not a gold plating thing. So the idea here is you create use cases, you generate events of the required types, you save those events somewhere, and then later on you leverage those events. So I hope that's useful. Go campaign to create your own event streams with your team, and have a great day.